else is even on the call. Hello, gorgeous faces. How are you all today? We've got a few people that are going to be latecomers, but we've got quite a great crowd already. So, Peter. Okay, guys, you know the rules, please. No normal questions. Peter, you're not allowed to check the chat box through the call, okay, but I will send it to him later. So if you have anything you want to say to him, he'll see it after the call. And quirky questions are welcomed throughout, and I will definitely make sure that we address all of them. 10-year-old Peter, what did you want to do when you were 10? Who were you when you were 10? Were you a lot to handle? Were you the quiet kid? What were you? Tell me about 10-year-old Peter.
Oh, I was such a pain in the ass. Oh my God. I was, yeah, 10 I wasn't good. At 17, I was 16. I think I broke the annoying barrier. Oh, I was such a needy little fella. Oh my God. I was
needy, like how? Like you wanted attention?
Oh, yeah, but hi, I'm here. Hi, I like you. Who should we tell on? I'll tell on him. I'll tell on him. Oh my God. Oh my God. Just, I was just super mama's boy. I was writing parodies, and my mother would help me write them, for my camp songs. And I remember being 10, I'm giving away my age, but the first time I heard of Woodstock, I was 10. It was 1969. So I didn't know what that was. It was in a Mad magazine song. And Judy Garland died that summer. And I was really upset about Judy Garland because I was big, what's that movie with the monkeys?
Wizard of Oz.
I knew that.
That's all you have to say right there. 10-year-old Peter was really upset about Judy Garland.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it's a little telling, isn't it? It's really,
that's so lovely. Yeah. Did you have ideas about what you loved to do? Like hobbies or what you wanted to be when you grew up?
I only remember ever wanting to be the center of attention and well-liked. I remember the big thing about camp. This was like a bungalow colony. This was like Dirty Dancing.
I never got to go to camp. Was it exciting?
Sleepaway camp was amazing. Sleepaway camp, I started when I was 13 and went, and that's when I did my first play. That's when that's when I hit theater, and 12 or so was when I wanted to be an actor, and that was it. Before then, it was just a general sense of wanting to be the center of attention and not picked on and not humiliated. And they had this thing, it was just devastating. They had this thing called the Covet Society, which is Hebrew for honor. And
the what society?
Covet, K-O-V-O-D, the Covet Award.
Covet, okay.
Now, they're talking about every summer, from the time I was 3 until I was 12, we'd go to Toll Timber. The fathers were away all week, and the mother, it was like, there was also a great movie about a man who sold T-shirts or something. I can't remember, Walk on the Moon or something. Anyway, so every Friday they give the Covet Award to a camper who was deserving, and it was such a big popularity club. I waited for freaking years. Every Friday I sat there praying, but come on.
Was there anything you could do to like up your chances, or was it literally just random?
The only thing I could have done to up my chances was change my personality and not give a shit, which never would have. It turns out my brother made sure that nobody ever voted for me. He was in the Covet Society for a year.
Was he older than you or younger?
Still older than me. Stupid. Anyway, so that was pretty much me. It was like, there's a picture of me, a home movie on my 4th birthday. God help me, I'm wearing some kind of velvet knickers, and this wasn't the 30s. This was just my mother. And I'm just like human fly. Just like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me.
I love that though, because you're an actor. You were an actor. You just didn't have a word for it.
Yeah. Well, by the time I hit about 25, 30, I relaxed a little bit. So.
But seriously, Peter, do you not think that we're all that little boy, like every single day, every single one of us, desperate and needy to be like that kid that's being paid attention to?
Yeah. But it took me a long time to learn that the more you want attention, the more you're going to get the wrong kind.
Yeah, you have to pretend like you don't want it.
Yeah. But by the time I was 12, I was a superstar.
Were you like in plays in school and everything?
When I was in 4th grade, there was my fourth grade teacher did a not a parody, or what is it? Just a like a well, it was, what's the word? It's not a parody, but it was basically he took Beauty and the Beast and used all the songs from Fiddler on the Roof, and which worked out remarkably well. I mean, it made a lot of sense, and it was always between me and Jeffrey Jacobson. I don't like him like I don't like my brother Jeffrey Jacobson. So it was between me and him.
Jeffrey Jacobson. Yeah, I can see you hating someone named Jeffrey Jacobson.
Tevye, which was really, it wasn't, I don't know if we called him Tevye because it was the Beast, the Beauty's father. But of course, it came down to the two of us and he got the part. And I just remember standing in the back with everybody else going. And he was good at sports. He didn't need everything. Stupid. So everyone's stupid but me. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, so I did, by the time I was like 12, I wound up at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City on Saturday mornings. And that was it. I started to...
But how did you wind up there? Did you like beg your parents to let you go? Or you don't just wind up at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts?
No, I was either 12 or 13 because what happened was I went to camp, sleepaway camp. This was after my parents' thing. I went to sleepaway camp for the first time when I guess I was 13 or something, 1972. And of course there had to be a dramatic story involved because, you know, Jews. So I had a hernia at 13 and I had to get my hernia fixed. So I was 2 weeks late for camp. But when I got there,
I'm not laughing at your hernia.
it was a funny hernia, you know, it's as hernias go. Getting shaved by a nurse, but just as you're hitting puberty, that's not funny though. Anyway, so I got to camp 2 weeks late, and whoever was playing Ambrose in Fiddler on the Roof, everything's Fiddler on the Roof, in Hello Dolly had quit the play. So the first thing that happened was I jumped in and I took over the part of Ambrose. Put on your Sunday clothes, there's lots of world out there.
And this was the sleepaway camp, right?
Sleepaway camp.
Do you know, I told my parents that if they'd sent me to camp, it could have changed my life. See the opportunities I missed out on?
You know, you could have been in Caddyshack. Yeah. So anyways, by the time I met a girl, crazy, not stupid, just really a little scary. She wanted to be my girlfriend and I liked another girl, but this girl was really like serious. And so I was like, okay. And I learned how to kiss and she was just terrible. She was a witch. Anyway, speaking of me, she went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, as we narrators say, go back. American Academy of Dramatic Arts, slow down. And she told me about it and I started going. I told my mother I wanted to be an actor now, that I was in one play.
What did your mother say?
My parents loved it. My parents introduced me to theater. By that time they also took me to Broadway from the time I was like 12. So
I love that.
We lived in New York. And so they took me to the American Academy on a Saturday and I auditioned for the head of the school. I even remember the first line of the monologue they gave me. Isn't memory weird? There was a house down on a hill near where we used to live. And there was this girl there. So anyway, I did that and was such emotion.
Wait. I've got to stop you on that. That is so strange because isn't it weird the things that we hold on to that you remember that first line? I remember like things that I memorized like 100 years ago. But if you ask me to memorize, that's part of why I'm glad I'm not in theater right this minute, because like you asked me to memorize something today,
sure,
it's like torture. But I wonder why, because, well, I guess it's long-term, short-term.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Our brains are like sponges. They absorb stuff, but they still have holes in them, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay,
so
go ahead. Sorry.
Liquid. Anyway, so I did that monologue and voila, I was, as everyone else probably was, accepted into the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And 2 weeks later, I was doing a scene from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? I was 13, I was playing George. So right then and there, I learned about what it was like to be married for 40 years and have a fake kid and have affairs with my students.
What did you love about the theater the most?
As a kid, it was the attention.
Yeah.
But I think it's always been, and this is the case now. I don't do a lot of theater now because of this and money and all that. But I did theater for most of my early life. And I still remember the feeling now, and it was scary when I was little. It was all, even up until, I don't know, late 20s, mid 30s, I was still mouth dry and all that. But in the last part of this part of my life, I have that when I go out on stage, there's this sense of belonging. There's this unusual sense of the opposite of belonging.
Your
Absolute
home.
freedom and comfort, and it's to me, it's still a magical, sacred space. I can almost feel it's like walking through a portal. And as my technique as an actor got better, you know, I was always super prepared. It was always, instead of going from backstage to on stage, I knew as an actor, like, where I was for the half hour before the play started. So I always had this, I started to enter the imaginary world with the world with me. And that gave me even more of a sense of place. But even then, I think it was a combination of people had to look at me. But, by the time I was 14 or 15, I remember playing Tavia, finally, Fiddler on the Roof Comes Back, at camp. And I remember the first thing that went wrong was the candles didn't light. And I came out with a very charming and very spontaneous quip, which turns out I was really good at. I was never really, I never really felt like major fear or terror, maybe once, and that was a long, long, long story. But once I did that and everybody laughed, I thought, oh, Jesus, this is funny, even if something goes wrong.
So what is more home for you, theater or film? Where is your, like, this is where I belong?
Film was never home. Film was fantasy, because I got into film when I was 19, 20 doing Caddyshack. So it's kind of like...
That was the first thing you got into?
That was my first film.
How the hell did you do that?
Well, funny you should ask. Not that
yes.
It's not my book. Basically, I was doing background work. I was an intern at the American, again, I'm skipping stories back, American Titan. Everyone's
you're going to be skipping literally until your head spins by the end of this call. Just be prepared. Nothing's a straight line.
Before we got here. That's now just counterclockwise so that I get my equilibrium back.
Caddyshack.
Caddyshack. So I was at the Berkshire Theater Festival. I was an intern, and I was there for 2 years, just backstage doing all that stuff. And it was a dream. It was the hardest work I've ever done, because you're not paid. You're doing 72-hour turnovers with no sleep, and all that. But the people I met, Joanne Woodward and all kinds of people. It was beautiful.
You met Joanne Woodward.
Joanne Woodward I have a great Joanne Woodward. I have a great story.
Oh yes, please.
So Joanne Woodward, I was now, by this time I was 19. No, I was 19 because yes. So I was 19 years old, and 19. If you picture me now in my later years, imagine me at 19. So right. So Joanne was very kind to all the interns. It was the first play she'd done in 20 years. It was Children's Hour with Shirley Knight. And she had kids, she treated the interns like friends. She was just lovely. And one of the things she said was, she was talking to me, I think we were just chatting, and she said, it's all a struggle. She said, you have to do it because you love it, but it's all a struggle. She said, she said, I got an Academy Award. I don't know, for The Three Faces of Eve. I don't know how young she was. She could have been in her late 20s or something at that point. She said, and for the last 30 years, people call me Paul Newman's wife. So, and so I thought about that, and I thought, wow, that's something. And then the show had closed 2 weeks later, and it's 11 o'clock, 11:30, and all the kids from Children's Hour. Roy Scheider's daughter was there. She had a little crush on me, and we got to be friends. So that was sweet. But I was very impressed with names and stuff, But anyway,
were you like impressed by celebrity and everything at the time?
So impressed.
Really?
Yeah. But the denouement, the end of the story is this: everybody's running around saying goodbye, hugging and getting in their cars. And their mothers are picking them up, and they're going back to New York. And I went down. I had to start breaking down the set because we had another show going up, obviously. And I went down to the dressing room to say goodbye to Joanne Woodward, and she's standing in the dressing room. And right next to her is Paul Newman. This is 1978. And he looked like Paul Newman.
I'm not impressed by names, but some names are just like, oh my gosh,
He had
all
his
of a sudden
great-
my childhood and everything I've ever watched comes flooding back.
he
Wow.
had his, his driving windbreaker on, the eyes, the whole thing. And she said, I said goodbye and thank you. And she said, this is my husband. I shook his hand and he smiled. And I said, pleased to meet you, Mr. Woodward. And his jaw dropped. He was absolutely like, no one had ever called him Mr. Woodward. And I just ran out down the hall. And as I turned around, Joanna's standing at her, I'll never forget, she's standing there hysterical. She says, so that was these were the experiences I had at the Berkshire Theater Festival, So yeah, I was duly impressed with them and with myself. That I wasn't planning on that. That's the thing. That's what I love about my brain. I just thought, oh, this is it.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Yeah, of course.
So your whole life, it doesn't sound like you spent too much. Were you in your head thinking, what do people think of me? Or were you in the moment? Or were you planning the future? Or were you ever worried you weren't going to become what you wanted to become? Where was your head during all this? Because you obviously kept taking the next action towards what you love. But what were you thinking when you did that?
I was thinking, and this is one of the things that keeps me young. I was thinking that it was inevitable. I just felt this, I had this sense that I was going to be an actor, that this was just the path. I'm babysitting for Tony Roberts' daughter, and I'm,
Where do you think you got that from? Do you think it was like confidence that your parents gave you? Was it confidence? Because you sound like you're not you sound like you weren't confident at the time about who you were, but you were confident about who you were going to become?
I'd say yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I was very needy in terms of, like, I have an older brother who was mean, and I was lousy at sports, and I got picked on, before Paul Newman, of course. And so I was still I wanted to be the center of attention. Once I discovered theater, and I had so much fun. I think because I grew up in New York, my parents loved the theater. We'd go to theater all the time. I never had a sense that it wasn't going to happen.
You rejected the normal life that didn't fit you, and you pursued the life because you saw the shining, you loved something and chased it.
I think because I grew up in New York, I didn't really think of the normal life. I mean, I was always in my head. I was always.
But being picked on by your brother and being bullied, that's the normal life. That's what people think of as normal.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were thinking, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Stuff at that age. No, I just started doing theater, and I was a theater major, at New Paltz. John Turturro was 2 years ahead of me. There were a lot of people at that theater department who are really extraordinary and who are out there now working in the business.
I keep thinking, because I keep going, because it was like you made, I don't know. I mean, I know you're saying it's not, but it feels like it was like a conscious choice, because the brother picking on you, the being bullied, that is the training ground for normal life. You learn to adjust and put up with it and shrink yourself and become who you have to become. And you literally seem like every single step of the way you made a conscious decision.
Yeah, I guess I did, because if you
That's
take all my
brilliant.
stories and unblend them and put them back in order, at 12, 13, I went to camp and did my first play. And that fall, I was at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I went every Saturday for 2 years. I met my girlfriend there. We used to go out after class, 15 years old. We'd go next door and have lunch. And, I was very comfortable, despite how dangerous the city was in the 70s, and who knew. We'd go meet in the city and walk around. I had a manager. I was getting my headshots done. I was doing, what's weird is I was doing plays in school where I had these two really super mean just self-involved theater teachers, high school theater teachers are either going to be awesome or terrible, telling me I would never make it. And I would be like, I'm not going to teach high school theater.
You get those special ones that don't feel like they made it, and they make it their mission to, like.
And then, what happened was, like, I graduated. In high school also, I wrote and directed musicals. I didn't write the music, it's when you steal the music. So every year I was doing shows, and by that time I was directing plays in high school. And I was a theater major at Newport, so for 2 years I was doing theater there, you know, reading all the greats.
Okay, I can't wait another second. I have to hear about Caddyshack. Tell me all the stories. Sorry, I know that like having been in something like that, you probably get really sick of talking about it. So I won't take too much of your time.
Talking about it, it's hard to be spontaneous when you've told the story so many times. And you know me, you can tell I'm pretty.
But what I want to hear is the moment you found out you were going to be in it, and if you knew how big of a deal it was going to be.
No, they didn't know how big a deal it was going to be until, you know, a year after it came out. You know,
how did you feel when you found out you were going to be in it?
I felt like, you know, it might as well have been a movie. I was just, the day I got it, I was still at the Berkshire Theatre Festival, because I auditioned over the summer. In fact, it was Tom Hulse, who I also had, I love Tom. He was played Amadeus in Mozart. He played the lead.
Wow.
I met him there he was doing a play, and I was backstage making up songs and singing them to him, and he thought they were hilarious. He had been in Animal House. He got me the audition. So 2 weeks later, I figured I wasn't going to hear anything, and I was having a miserable day. I had just hit my finger. I was a carpenter at that summer. Yeah. Not a good one, a terrible one. I failed woodshop in high school. And I was building scenery, and I hit my finger the same place like 4 times, and I was down in the bathroom, miserable. Like, I'm the only one who doesn't get paid. My finger hurts, and I'm a prince, and what's happening here? And I got someone came running over and said, you got a phone call from California at the office. I ran up to the office, and I picked up the phone.
And what were you thinking? Well, you're skipping the best bits. What were you thinking when you're running up to the office? Were you thinking this could be it?
I didn't know if this was it, but I thought this was maybe it. You know, I just remembered I went into that, you know, that place where everything becomes kind of a hum.
And the adrenaline's flooding your system with excitement.
Bad shock. It's like
a 10-year-old on a sugar high.
Yeah, only now I'm just turned 20, and I'm just, you know, I have hormones, so I run faster and trip over my nose hairs. So I'm running up to the theater, and I pick up the phone. I said, hi, this is Peter. And it's Wally Nacita, who I'm now friends with on Facebook. And she said, yes, hi, Peter. This is Wally Nacita from Warner Brothers. The role is Angie, and the rate is $8.50 plus per diem. And I'm like, you know, which she must have thought was very attractive. And why I got cast. And she said, yes. I said, wait. I said, this is definite? I remember the conversation where she said, yes, this is an offer. I accept.
That's such an actor thing to say, because that's what we all think. Penciled in. Yeah, right.
I accept. And then she said, so it's $8.50 per diem. And I said, I'm sorry, I just wrote down $8.50. Is that wrong? And she said, yes, at which point she probably realized I didn't have an agent, and it was then $750 because they were adding on 10% for my agent, who obviously would not have allowed me to answer the phone and say, is this $8.50? So I still remember that. I still have a piece of paper that I saved. It was me doodling while I was on hold. And it's like, it's a line with squiggles on it. It says, my life on the line. I mean, everything was so dramatic.
What was the first thing you did? Did you call your parents? Did you call your girlfriend? Who was the first person you called?
I don't think I had a girlfriend at that point. I was a theater major. It was just a lot of like stuff, you know, there wasn't anything, I didn't have a specific girlfriend at that point. I called my parents. I was still a mama's boy. I got on the phone. I said, I just got cast in this movie. I got cast in the movie. And Jeffrey Chase is in it. And Ted Knight is in it. You know, we were big Mary Tyler Moore fans. And, oh, Robert, pick up. You know, and my father got on and I told him the whole story. And my mother said, we have to join the pool club this summer. You know, we weren't fans of this one's Queens. You know, it wasn't Long Island.
Oh, this is lovely.
You have to get your nails done. So it was really something. And then, you know, a couple of weeks later, my mother's taking me to Great Neck department store where everything is beautiful because it's very expensive. and she picked out clothes for me. And she told me that when we got our clothes, my clothes for Florida, she said, that salesman was homosexual. And I said, how can you tell? She said, he had his eye on you. And I was like, oh, ew. But I was like, really? Anyway, so I had got my beautiful clothes and I went to,
See the time, see, that's the thing that's so beautifully drawn, the relationship with the parents and everything. It's the excitement of being that age, the moment something momentous happens that changes everything.
oh my God. So, and 30, 40 years later, it got me tips in restaurants. I would be having a bad night. I'd tell someone I was in Caddyshack, I get $100. So, it became more of a, more of like a sex trade thing at that point. It's like, what am I going to do? I'm 50. Tell people you're in Caddyshack and they give you money.
So no, wait, so it didn't go from strength to strength. You were a jobbing actor after there and after that, and then.
Well, I left school because Caddyshack was shot in the fall. So by the time I got out of school, by the time the movie was over, it was November. And I decided, everybody said, don't go back to school. This is where you're going to hit it. The movie's coming out in the summer and you got to. So, I wound up getting a job at a law firm and I was running. I mean, I was so naive. I was so naive. I remember when the movie opened, I would just go door to door, knocking on agents' doors, wearing my funny T-shirts and cutoffs, cutoff denims. Of course, this was 70, whatever. and I walked into the president of BCI's office, Barbara Clayman, on the top floor at 1500 Broadway. Walked right past her secretary because I didn't know any of the stuff, and sat at her desk waiting till she got off the phone, so I could invite her to see the movie because it was going to be premiering downstairs. And she came. It was so interesting. I think there was something at that point infectious about my naivete and my energy that I didn't get thrown out.
But do you not think that I think that we lose that, and I think we don't do ourselves any favor by losing that. I think I see people every day in this industry cut themselves off from opportunities because we all know too much. It's what we were saying before the call, before I was like, let's not talk about anything more interesting. We all know so much because it's all out there now. You can tick every box on earth and you know how everything works. So why bother with anything? We're all jaded now. I love naive you. Some of us should walk into an office. Don't quote me if any publishers watch this. I'm not saying go to the publisher's office and bug them, but we could afford to maybe just try.
Yeah, make connections. And I think it's also because there were no computers. We were still either making phone calls or talking in person. And so we were used to even though I wasn't a very good listener, not at all. I was always waiting till someone, it was like learning your lines and being a terrible actor.
You're supposed to react, not, you're waiting for their line to be done so you can talk.
So I can tell them about me. Right. So for a long time, that was still in effect. But other than that, we were used to communicating without, this is lovely and fun and what a great opportunity. And I can teach at home and all that. Now we're a generation that only dresses from the waist up to meet people. So it's all a little bit weird. I have pants on. I would know.
I have a whole wardrobe of sparkly shoes that never see the light of day. I'm thinking of setting up a display behind me for Zoom calls. So at least my shoes get somewhere. Okay. So, but more important things. Okay. So you've been in movies then, you've done theater. Did you ever have a moment in your adult life where you were like, is this going to work out? Am I going to be successful? Or did you feel pretty steadily successful, a jobbing actor your whole life?
Let me tell you a quick story about the worst theater experience I ever had.
Ooh.
And the only day I almost quit acting.
Okay.
And the moral of the story is don't ever take direction from anybody but the director. So I'll try to make this a Cliff Notes story, but here's the deal. I was working, now this is post Caddyshack, early 20s.
Post Caddyshack.
Yeah, so we're talking about, 1982, 1983. I'm 22, 23 years old.
Right.
And I got a job as a messenger for a talent agency. And so what I would do is I'd get to the talent agency late morning after they'd gone through their submissions, and I'd staple the submissions together, and then I'd go out and walk around the city dropping off the headshots to all the casting people. In those days, they would have messenger services.
That's what you, yeah.
So I worked for this one company, and I mean, there were some wonderful days. Like the very first day I walked into a major casting office, and she said, "Are you an actor?" She called me, but it turns out it was like something like Risky Business, and I was just a little over the top. I was like, "Oh yeah, I was in Caddyshack." She was like, "Okay." And years later, I started talking about how she cast, I think it might have been when she cast him, Tom Cruise. She would say she talked to actors, and if she felt her shoulders go up, she knew right away she wasn't going to be able to work with them. I'm sure she was like this by the time I left the room. Anyway,
if she felt her shoulders go up.
Yeah, she knew she was getting tense and didn't want to hire anybody. I was like, oh, the funniest thing happened at Caddyshack. They dropped the thing and there was no count. I was all planned out. I was just not, I was too excited because this was the fantasy I'd pictured when I got this job. Like somebody is going to see me and I'm going to get cast in a movie. It happened the first delivery and I just blew it.
And that's the funny thing. We always think, I'm not digressing, I promise. We always think we'll be ready for our moment when our moment comes. So we practice and rehearse our moment and picture it. And the moment is always the other moment when we're not ready and we're wearing that weird, dodgy outfit and we say the wrong thing. That's the moment. Okay, go back. Sorry.
Anyway, so basically what happened was I got cast in a play, a wonderful play. It was silly. I was in my 20s, but I was very, very young looking. I was playing a 14-year-old high school student.
I hate to tell you, you're very young looking still. It's kind of that whole thing about men get to age well and we don't.
You should see my people. The men I went to high school with are just old looking, man.
Like those people that go to high school reunions. I'm sorry, where do they get those people?
they go someplace and then they come back looking different. That's what happens. They go to
like people's grandparents.
Yeah. I see all the Grateful Dead shirts and I'm like, oh God.
Not making fun, obviously. I'm very happy. No. Okay, so go back.
Long story interminable. I get cast in a play about a boy who winds up getting called into the girls' bathroom. And there's a really nice girl there. She needs help. And then the pretty girl comes in. And so here's this guy who's like horny and naive and young, and he sees words on the wall that he doesn't get. So it was a real.
Wait, is this a movie or a play?
That was a play. It was one act play. But it was written by Brett Adams, who was the agent I worked for. It was his part who wrote this play. And so the getting into this play was a big deal because what they were going to do was they were going to have a producer's night where every producer in New York, Broadway and off Broadway was going to come and see the opening night.
Right. So it's like a showcase.
I was very excited. And what happened was there was a Monday preview, a Tuesday preview, and then there was the big night, Wednesday night. Monday, we had a great show. We had so much fun. We had a great show. And at work the next day, Brett, the agency where I was doing my submissions, he calls me into his office and says, I want to talk to you. And of course, I'm thinking, this is it. He's finally going to sign me.
I'm a star.
And he starts off by making me think that's what's happening. He was saying, when you first auditioned here and when you started working here, some really high hopes for you and this and that. And he said, I've been wanting to send you out for, he wanted he said he was going to submit me for the Torchstone trilogy, the kid, the young guy.
I'm getting a bad feeling about where this is going.
So then he says, but I have to tell you, I'm very disappointed with your work last night.
Oh my God, why?
Well, he proceeded to tell me that I was playing it up too much, that I was playing to the audience, and that it started to feel forced. Had
he not mentioned any of this earlier in a little, maybe tone it down or bring it down a little bit? What an asshole.
What he should have done was called the director, who had a wonderful relationship with him, and said, do you think Peter's, pushing too much? And she would have said no, or, maybe pull it back when it doesn't feel authentic. He told me, you got it. He crushed me. He literally crushed me. He said, and I walked out of there, and what happened that night, I don't know which was worse, that night or the next night, but that night I was terrified. I spent the entire, it was a real actor's nightmare. I spent the entire play, and I'm on stage the whole time. It was a one act. doing what I had been doing, but the whole time I was thinking, I got to get off the stage. I got to get off the stage. I got to get off the stage. I don't want to be here. I was
Wait,
terrified.
I have a question. Where was he going with calling you in? Was he going to fire you? Or did
No.
he just call you in to make you feel horrible?
Good friends play, and everyone was coming on Wednesday, and he wanted me to do better. So instead of saying, you did great, but you played it up a little bit,
No,
just remember.
that was so passive aggressive, and it was very personal. Something about you he just didn't like.
Well, he thinks he liked me anyway.
Yeah.
So what happened was, that night it was awful, and that wasn't even the bad part of the story. People were still laughing, but I was calling it in. And at the end of the night, Kay Ballard, God bless her, was a client, and she came that night and she told me I was wonderful and this and that. But I thought, okay, well, that's nice, but I'm going to do what he asked me to do. And so I started thinking in terms of film. And I started thinking in terms of being very honest and pulling things back and being genuine. And so the next night was opening night. And I did exactly what he told me to. I was just so into it. Instead of going, what's that mean? I was like, what's that mean? So what happened was I thought I was brilliant. I did exactly what he told me to do. And it was honest, it was truthful, it was real, it was organic to some extent. And I left this, but nobody laughed. And I just thought, well, they're producers. They're here to watch. They don't want to laugh, whatever. As I'm walking down the stairs, talk about dramatic. The boyfriend, the playwright, sorry, this was the 70s, so the boyfriend, the 80s, he's actually holding a hammer in his hand. As I'm walking down to the dressing room, smashing it into his hand, he said, what did you do? What did you do to my play?
Right.
So, long story short, I left before the second act, and I sat at a restaurant with a friend of mine and had a drink. And the hardest part was there was a big party afterwards for the producers and the cast at the office. And I went back to the office, and nobody would look at me. None of the producers would make eye contact with me. And I sat there absolutely mortified because we had 3 days off, and then we had to do the show again. And I was sitting there mostly the whole time thinking how I was going to quit. So I wasn't going to go back on stage. And what happened, the nicest thing that happened was I'm sitting there with one of the agents I really liked, a guy named Will Mott. And one of the clients of theirs was Kathy Bates, who had been doing Night Mother on Broadway at the time.
Wow.
And Will said to me, he said, you didn't do anything wrong. He said, you took a note, and you took it very well. He said, Brett had no right giving you notes. And what he did was he gave you an adjustment. And you made the adjustment, and you did what he said. But acting is adjustments, and you don't have time to make adjustments that
and
big.
You were hired for who you are. You were hired to do the job that they got when they hired you. And this guy's going and telling you, do a different job. And let me just interject. Tad has a really good point. He said, I've had plays produced, code of honor. You never talk to the cast about their performance. And if they ask you a question, you say, I don't know, ask the director.
That was the law. Well, I'll just tell you one nice thing about the end of the story is the only thing that got me back on the stage, I think, at that point, was Kathy Bates. She said, you know what? She's doing Night Mother on Broadway. She said, I had a show one night. She said, it was my best show. It was so powerful. Every moment was true. And I got off the stage, and one of my friends said, we couldn't hear you in the back. And she said, and I've had other nights where I felt like I was phoning it in, and people told me I was brilliant. So she said, you'd go out, you do what you do as well as you can do it. You'll love it because that's what you do. And whatever people think is what people think. And that helped me a lot. But it was such a traumatic experience. And I've told the story I haven't told the whole story for years, but it was don't ever give notes if you're not a director. And if someone tries to give you a note, you say, I really appreciate your feedback. Please talk to the director.
Yeah, and I had a fellow actor that was horrible, actually, determined to give me notes, like chase me around the stage. And the funny thing, it was a eccentric, he's an amazing Greek director, and me and the other lead, We would try so hard to please him every night because he'd give these like, and do this, and he'll wear a black shawl because he was like 90 and he's always called, just an amazing guy. And do this and do that. He was doing when you were good, he loved you. And so one night we nailed it. We literally, because we've lived like to try to pin this down to make this guy happy. And one night we nailed it. And we walked off stage. I remember we gave each other high fives. We were like, got it, we got it. And he just was standing there going, what did you do?
Yeah, crazy. Not,
You
it's
never
funny,
know.
I don't want to drag this out, but I just had another memory. A couple of years later, I did a one act, a short one. It was like a 10-minute play.
Yeah.
And it was just a two-character play, very, very short. And I think we performed it like total of 3 or 4 times. And it was the last night. And I was now a working actor, and I was studying with Melody Summers at Ensemble Studio Theater, and I was taking a class, an audition class, and I was taking Feldenkrais and Linkletter, all these classes in New York.
So you're like, I'm a professional.
Yeah, and what happened was the night before, then after the second to last performance, I started to think about it, and I got some really like new insight. And when you're doing a play like that, you're always, I mean, as actors, God knows.
It's a living thing. Every performance is a living thing.
And so that night I made a tiny adjustment. I just made an adjustment to listen more and to respond in the moment more. So I didn't really change the direction. From what I could tell, it was exactly the same. But what happened was, it was the same thing. I finished the show feeling great, and the director came up to me and she said, I will never hire you again. And I went out with friends and I said, was I bad? He said, no, you were great. It was fun. I had no idea. At that time, I didn't even know what to say. I said, what did I do? She said, she wouldn't talk to me. So who the hell knows? I mean,
but it's so relevant. I mean, okay, so you coach people and you teach them, and I've got to tell you, it's so relevant. And every once in a while, I will get triggered again. And I know it comes from theater. And I had an epiphany the other day because there was an article recently. I'm not going to bring this up on every call, I swear, guys, about narrators. And Eduardo Ballerini posted it on Twitter, and I read it. He's amazing. And I read it, and and there were a lot of really good points on it. But it was about kind of subtlety and how Americans aren't great at it. But a lot of things, don't anticipate what the person's going to say, don't give away. And I get that. A lot of those are very sage, things that we all try to keep in mind. But it triggered my, oh my God, do I overact? And I got that from theater. Mm-hmm. And I realized that you bring yourself to the stage. I overact in life. I have a conversation, and most of the time people are looking at me like a deer caught in the headlights. Right. I've never not been that person. So if like what you took the note, I've done that in narrating. I've done that in auditions when I really want it. So I try to change who I am because I, God forbid, don't want to overact. So in the moment, take it down, take it down, take it down. And then I lose me. Mm-hmm. It's
book. It was this was the only time I've had something like this immediate information, which was good. I am more of the in terms of vocal choices, I lean a little bit more toward the Luke Daniels than the Scott Brick. Scott is extremely subtle. I like them both very much. Luke occasionally does, he'll do specific voices for everybody, and that's partly his thing. And I always found that obviously the book is an imaginary world, and you have to honor the tone and spirit of that.
Yeah, so and you don't want to scream in their ear. I mean, they're sitting 2 inches from you.
If you're doing a serious courtroom drama, then the girl from New Jersey who's on the stand isn't going to have a fun time. Like the guy in Jesus Christ Superstar who thought he was in Hello Dolly, and it's like, no, Jesus is dying. Put your stop smiling. But but in this case, it was I did a book for it was the Christopher Golden. It was horror novel. And I've been getting feedback. I did some books for Recorded Books, and they said, we tend to focus more on the inner life than the outer life. And so the voices might be a little bit more subtle. And so for that book, I decided to make my voices a little more subtle. I just thought I'd give it a shot. What the hell? I loved the story. And so I did that. And I kept the voices a little bit more neutral, but focused just on the actions and I got a lovely review from, Audiophile saying my voice was perfect, scary book there. But the characters weren't as clearly defined. And I thought, well, fuck me. you know, so that I gave it a shot, and I decided to go back to what I felt was what I want to listen to. So yeah, I mean, that's, you know, acting is adjusting, but when you are directing yourself and you have so many voices,
Yeah.
even before people start talking, then your own and then others, you know, there's so many ways to get in your own way. And I think what I've found both as a teacher, coach, and actor is the same thing I've been trying to do for years, which is to honor the story, honor the writing, tell the story. You know, I used to say, do it for the character. You know, let the character live the way he was written, you know. Try to find like ways in, you know, metaphor helps an awful lot, you know, and because we're dealing with intangibles, we're dealing with human feeling and you know,
And they're feeling, the characters have lives. And that's my first clue. And I have to keep pulling myself back. Daniela, if you're asking yourself if you're overacting, you're not doing your damn job. You're not acting, or you wouldn't be thinking about yourself, would you? You wouldn't be
right.
in the room.
Or at least if you're asking those questions, ask it as the character. Does the character want that kind of attention? Or is the character going to, in that moment, you know, quiet down for a specific reason? You know, it's always the action. It's a hard, you know, we have terms like action and all of that, but the thing I've always learned is universal as a teacher, as a coach, when you're auditioning, whatever it is, you know, and this is obvious. This is like, it's not 101, but acting isn't emotion. Emotion is like, it's like if your emotions are your colors, you think it's enough to just show somebody your crayons and call it art, you know, but it's not. It's what you do with it, and it's
technique is important.
Yeah,
and
so
training.
Like, even if it's like like Jacob Grimm, I'm doing a great series now, which is, it's so wonderful. We need a good writer, even if it's the same nonsense sort of genre, you know, outer space and whatever, Litberg or whatever. But even with this one character, like whatever he's doing, he has a real sense of honor. He's like Captain Kirk, or better than Kirk, you know, but that kind of a character. And so when I'm giving a speech, I'm giving it because his mother was killed and he's trying to honor her. I'm not thinking I could make a better voice here, you know. So it's like, it's the stuff that you can do as a person. You can intimidate someone, you can threaten something. This is all basic acting stuff.
It's, they say the character doesn't know they have an accent. The character doesn't know. Okay, so I do have to preface, I've got another question, but I have to say one thing. Alex said, I won't say the whole thing here, but he's the most generous actor you could ever want to share the stage with. And I have heard that actually about you. And Kim says, isn't this similar to when you get a very detailed bad review, that it's almost opposite from the majority of the other reviews? You have to weigh where, what, that opinion. And yeah, and that's funny because you notice when, that's why I don't want to read my reviews. I have someone else do it, because it's like, if you're in a bad mood, guess which review you're going to listen to.
And the thing that we have to remember is that the only reviews, if we're going to pay attention to reviews, pay attention to the professional reviews where people are doing a service, whether you like the service. Audible is not reviews. It's just a lot of people expressing their opinion. And most people, as we know, feel very safe anonymously to express whatever they want. And the person who is, you know, gonna, you know, cut you off and give you the finger and slam on their horn is the same person who's going to say, I fucking hated this guy. His voices were stupid. You know, that's real easy. Those aren't reviews. They're just, you know, they're just nonsense. I did have a review where I was called a retarded Al Pacino, and I thought that's what I was trying to do. So that was awesome.
I don't even give that a chance. I was looking for a cake the other day, Betty Crocker, and all the reviews said it was the most disgusting thing on earth. And my childhood memories were that it was wonderful. And it occurred to me that I'm on a UK site, and I went to a US site, and thousands of reviews saying it was amazing. And it just really made me think, you know, it's never obvious why. Okay, I never got to ask you this question. I've got another question, and I know that you've got your thing later on too, so I don't want to take too much of your time.
I'm all right.
How did you end up in audiobooks?
How did I get into audiobooks?
Yeah, how did that happen?
Well, let's see, very quickly, I knew, you know, life goes on whether you like it or not. And, you know, when my son was born, he's 29 now, I had to stop doing theater for a while and think about how to make a living. And of course I started teaching, and that was just about as much as acting, who knew? But what happened was somewhere around 2000, I'll give you just, instead of the whole background on psychology, basically what happened was I decided I wanted to do it. I'd heard about it. I'd listened to them. I was a fan of audiobooks. They were still on tape at that point. And so somewhere around, I started looking on Craigslist, because that's what we did. I actually got some good Craigslist. Yeah, back in the early 90s, late 90s, I got some really good jobs on Craigslist.
I thought Craigslist was just for like psycho killers and like yellow station wagons.
If that's what you're looking for, you can get both. I got a psycho killer in a station wagon at one point, but that story's going nowhere. So anyway, you got to know when to stop occasionally. So anyway, I basically got some gigs, and one of them was it was a guy in Boston who had gotten it was for the Library of Congress for the sight impaired. And when I met the guy, it turned out I had known him. I'd emailed him, and he had emailed back. It's a little convoluted, but one of my closest friends, or one of my close friends, is Andre Dubus III, who is a novelist and wrote House of Sand and Fog and blah, blah, and a lot of other stuff. And he and his wife wound up doing, my friend Fontaine, his wife's the dancer, they wound up doing the House of Sand and Fog book, audiobook, in Boston. Turns out the guy I auditioned for the Library of Congress was the same guy. We got to talking, and the audition, actually, basically I did, talk about, not picking original material. I did the first part of the first chapter of the first Harry Potter book as my fiction sample, and a nonfiction for my other, and I was approved by the Library of Congress for all forms, fiction, nonfiction, whatever. So I did about a year and a half part-time making.
What your first audiobook? What was the experience? What did you think after you'd done it?
My first audiobook was it was weird. It was a series of monologues. It was about a fireman, a black fireman. And right away I was like, well, I better not make him talk like this.
Yeah, and these days you'd have to say, sorry, diversity, because
in fact, my very first time I was at the
that didn't exist back then, did it? I mean, people didn't call that out, did they, at that time?
No, right. Yeah, I mean, this was 2000.
2000, that was, yeah. So
long ago. But I remember saying to, I was in the front row at APAC in 2009, and I said, I got this book, and most of the characters were African-American. I was like, and I said, I just said the same thing. I didn't do it like that. And Dion Graham, who I'd never met before, said, on behalf of the NAACP, thank you. But anyway, the first book was weird because it was just a series of monologues, and I took it very seriously,
But nobody does it like that, do they? No, but I mean, even back then, nobody would.
No, of course not. I was just
audiobook narrators are more kind of
Brooklyn Jew. My mother, marched with whoever in the 60s, and so very aware that why are they giving me this? And it was fine. It was fun. What happened was I wasn't overthinking anything. I'd been reading a lot my whole life. I'd been reading out loud my whole life. My son, not my whole life. But and it was like a duck to water. I just started doing it, and I picked book after book after book after book.
Are you good at accents?
I'm very good at some accents. I found that I'm not as good as I thought at certain accents, because from the time I was a kid, I was doing all right, hello, and I did all kinds of accents. In fact, I used to think that that was acting, that you do a play and you'd have to have an accent. One of the first notes I ever got is, your English accent needs a little bit of work. And I was like, are you kidding? I've been doing it since I was 11.
Yeah, see, the reason I asked that is because that's what made me think when you said that about the racially diverse book, is that the thought occurred to me in a secondary character with an English accent, which isn't my best accent, that I hope I'm not so bad that they think I'm making fun of an entire. You don't want to sound like you're making fun of someone just because you're trying, because to an untrained ear, if it's an accent you're not good with, you pick up the most obvious stereotypes, huh?
Right, right. But yeah, I think I'm pretty good. I mean, I've been doing Russian accent for years. I've been doing, I do a lot of accents. I do a lot of all the European accents, German. Yeah, I do them. I do want to get together at some point with PJ Oakland and really nail them. I remember I had to do a bunch of Australians in one book, and
I can't do Australian. Don't hire me for your Australian books. I'm just saying.
Well, I could take one. There were a bunch of them. So you're doing like 3 Australians, right? And he said, I wrote to him and he said, think soft palate. And so, all right, like I love doing like, hello creature, it's all right, it's something about that. But he's like, no, it's softer palate, it's further back, eh? It's further back, eh? So it's like, all right, Foster's, that's a beer. So I started just working on keeping my accent in the back of my throat, eh? And I don't know if it was great Australian or not, but it was better than what I would have done. So I would like to really work with someone who can say, this goes here and this goes back here. And, if you're doing French, the placement is here,
What kind of books do you love doing?
When I started, I loved doing young adult stuff because my voice was still young enough to play, kids. But I found myself really loving thrillers.
Thrillers?
Thrillers, crime thrillers. It's a natural for me because the characters are all, lots of bad guys. If it's in New York, it's that much easier because I can do all the boroughs, Queen.
I can hear you doing the Harlan Coben-y kind of stuff. Like I would buy that audiobook.
I did a Harlan Coben for the Library of Congress. That was
you did a Harlan Coben? Which one?
It was called The Woods. Scott Brick did it for real life.
Yeah, wow, that's a good one. How was it? Was it amazing doing that one?
It was fantastic. I've been lucky. When I started out, before ACX and all that, I was working with a couple of companies, and I was doing Kuntz and Dean Kuntz and Linwood Barclay, who's become huge, and all these.
I love Linwood. I'm a Linwood Barclay girl. That's me.
Listen to The Accident. I got an award for The Accident in 2011. It was one of my first books, and my.
Wait, is that one on ACX? Is that one on Audible?
It's on Audible. I did it for Brilliance in 2011.
Wait, the Linwood Barclay one.
Yeah.
That was you?
That was The Accident. Yeah, that was one of my favorites.
That wasn't you. Was that you?
It was.
Okay, I'm really glad you said that at the end of the call because now I'm completely fangirl. And I would have embarrassed myself by being a bit grovelly. Oh my God, that's so... See, this is my dream, doing those books. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of girls doing those books, but this is my dream. That's amazing. What was that book like to do? When did you do? I'm taking everyone's like, oh God, here she goes off on a tangent.
Oh, I'm in no rush. 2011, so it was one of my first books. And I do remember a friend of mine saying, you were sexy. You were. You know what was nice about that, though, in those days? And Paul Rubin directed it. So I didn't have to direct myself. It was one of my first. I did it in New York.
Oh,
and Paul Rubin directed it. And somehow, it was a great book. The thing that kills me is I've done a lot of famous people, and then all of a sudden they get more famous. And now other people do their books. I haven't done a Linwood Barclay book since. I did Ben H. Winters, who did The Last Policeman. One of the best trilogies I've ever done. Broke my heart. Brilliant. And then I don't get any of his. Listen, I'm so grateful. 10 years ago, I was still saying, do you want more salsa? Yeah. Ew, that was stupid. I'm back to stupid, full circle.
Yes. I'm actually even loving the book about the guy with the tight shirt.
It's such a great thing, it's a really great.
And when you get the book, right? Do you know that you had to have felt it for the Linwood Barclay book, that feeling of like excitement and like you can't even hide it. I remember I did a book, I can't say because it's not out yet, but when I saw it, you know, they send you the, would you be interested in auditioning for this one? And you normally go, yeah, put me forward, whatever. And then they come back and you're like, you don't have to tell me if I didn't get something. I forget about it the minute I audition. And this one I was like, yes, please. What do I have to do? Do you need samples? I can show you my website. Do you need new demos? Do you need blood? Because sometimes you can't lie to yourself. Sometimes it's just exciting, huh?
Yeah. You know, I think that what's happened in the industry in the last couple of years, it's gotten a little more lonely, because I got books every time I went to APAC. I get a new book from a new person every time, and usually it was just from saying, hey, like I ran into somebody on an escalator from Harper, and they called me 2 days later after APAC. You know, so I really miss that interaction. What's happened in the last 2 years is I find myself working for maybe 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3 companies all the time. Whereas before the pandemic, I was working for 15, 12, you know, like Audible, gone. You know, a lot of companies, they just vanished, you know, and you get tired, you don't get tired of chasing people down, but as long as you're working, you're grateful for what you're doing. So, but it's become a little colder, I think.
There's also an influx of people into the industry that are, who are we kidding, pros at marketing and social media and reaching out. And so, I mean, it's like their full-time job. So so I'm talking to a lot of narrators that are like 400 books, 500 books. And they're like, it never used to be like this. I would call, I'd have a relationship and I would call, but now it's like, I'm having to audition more, and you know, things aren't coming as easily. And that's the nature of the industry. And then it's intimidating, because then it's like, well, do you have to suddenly become a marketing genius instead of a full-time narrator? Do you have to be on Discord 24 hours a day, you know, showing your wares instead of making acting choices in the booth? Do you know what I mean? And it's always more nuanced than that, and it's not the case. And there are things that the narrators with 500 books can learn from the narrators with 20 books that are marketing geniuses. And there's a lot the marketing geniuses can learn from the actors with 400, 500 books under their belt. I think if we all pull together and learn from each other, we can create, because of COVID, yeah, it is in a bubble right now. And so the marketing is full force, in my opinion. But I think that when things start to open up again, it's going to open out a little bit more. And the eagerness and this big influx of people, that I call them the COVID people, which I mean that as a good thing, because you know me, I love my Zoom, but they're going to be more seasoned anyway, more set with what they have. And then the narrators with more will be more into like shaking hands. And
big to get together in person, and all these great marketing people are going to show up naked from the waist down because they forgot, you know.
No, they're out at events. They're at events now. They're showing up in person. Those people are brave, because I'm the one with the pajamas. I had the thought of going into a big room full of people eager to hug each other after being locked up for years. I can think of nothing more terrifying.
Yeah, I felt that way a year ago, but now
Yeah.
I would inhale, hug everybody, and then exhale later. It's like Clinton did with marijuana. You just wait until no one's around.
I wasn't a hugger before COVID. I'm definitely not one now.
Yeah,
I like Zoom. If you guys, you go off and hug for a while, and the next disease, come back and see me. I'll still be here.
Oh, we'll bring our monkey.
Okay, you're not getting away with this easily. We have a final question for you.
Oh.
For the YouTube audience that's going to be watching in the next 60 years. Wait, I want to make sure. Have I missed? I don't want to. Oh, I did miss. I had a thought. Maybe I missed a quirky question I have to ask first. Question from Kim. With all the theaters you've been in, have you ever had a haunted experience?
You know, I am very, very not in touch with that sort of thing. You know, some people are really, really like in touch with that. You know, I have been to places that people said are haunted. My wife and I went to a place, you know, in the 80s in England where she and her friend Gabby were just like, couldn't get out of there fast enough. I'm like, look, a cow. So, yeah, I mean, I know that when I was in Camp Leah, where I played Tevye and Fiddler on the Roof, there's a chapel there. Oh my God, I can't tell this whole story now. But we did have a weird experience in that chapel. It was a chapel, but it was our theater. And there were stories about how Gary, the director, was sitting there late one night and he turned around, there was a little boy sitting there and he turned back and he was gone. But we did have an experience one day where we decided to do, this is camp, we decided to do
that was someone else. It's so funny. I can picture Peter somehow sitting there, the little boy's dragging chains across him and Peter's like, what? I don't see anything.
You know, it's so dark in here.
So go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted.
Well, anyway, we decided to do a seance to call back the ghost of Brian Jones, who had died. He was a Beach Boy or something, right? So this is 1970. So we had a seance. We're going to call back Brian Jones. All of a sudden, it was something right out of the freaking Exorcist. I'll never get over this because I can't figure it out. But one of the girls in the circle got up and started crying and screaming. It was like, I don't know if she was psychotic, but she was always pretty well put together. Not like the girl who made me be her boyfriend. She was there too. But
she was there like, all those years later?
No, this was the same year. It's 1973.
Oh, okay.
So brought me out a French kiss.
Okay.
Paris. Ew. Ugh. Maybe it was because she had fun at the time. I don't know. She was. Anyway, so.
I hope she doesn't watch this video, poor thing. Probably had a crush on you your whole life. Probably stalked you on Facebook. And okay, so go ahead.
So anyway, so this woman gets up and she starts crying like she was being possessed. And then she starts laughing, you know, and nobody was that good. And then she says in a voice like the frickin' Exorcist, Alana is going to get hurt. And Alana, one of the girls, starts screaming and tries to climb out the window, which of course is ground floor. So she only got hurt because I ran over because I was going to meet the hero and I dragged her off the window and we both fell down. And then all the friends outside who were watching this stormed the doors and freaked us all out and we ran away. So that was bad, now that you mention it. But nothing quite as subtle as, you know, looking up and seeing Ethel Merman going.
So you're not going to be like on Medium anytime soon.
Yeah, no, I don't really get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the question, and I've been asked for a repeat. I'm going to switch. Thank you, Nancy. Time capsule. I've been avoiding it because I can't remember the word forever for the life of me for some reason. Okay, so you know how in school sometimes they bury time capsules so
Sure.
that people can go and dig them up 20, 30 years ago and they see what life was like back then. So if you were going to put something in the YouTube time capsule, so in 60 years, people would remember Peter, what would you want to leave people? Some advice, a funny joke? What would you want if they take anything, nothing else away from this call that you've learned in your entire life? What would you want to leave people with?
Oh boy, a funny joke. I love that. When I was starting to tell you about burlesque, because you said you did burlesque, I did an article about burlesque for a newspaper when I first moved to New Hampshire. And I asked the guy if he might, how old he was. He said, I'm 76. He said, I should have been 77, but I was sick a year. I'd like to leave a joke like that people always laugh at. But wait, I'll get you something. I'll show you. It's right here. It would have to be maybe my Caddyshack shirt.
Oh, cool. Oh, cool. Okay, now that is something.
Because that way
something
people
for the time capsule.
They don't know you. So there's that. And you know, and a good Jewish joke. It's a good Jewish joke. I'll tell you one more quick Jewish joke that I might leave. About 2 years ago, something was during COVID. My dad, who is still around, he's 96. He went in for some operation, and wrong story. That would be terrible. I told the whole wrong story in a rush. Woke up one day, and he was out of his mind. He was literally had lost his mind. It was like scary as shit. This was a couple of years ago. He's calling up and he's saying, have you watched The Crown? Have you watched The Crown? He went on and on. He called everybody in the middle of the night and in the morning, because your mother used to watch this, and I feel like she's talking to me, and it was really, really, really scary. Nobody knew what was going on. So It went on for about a week. They took him to the hospital, and he just had no idea what was going on, who he was, where he was. It was the middle of COVID. We were terrified that he was going to get sick. We weren't going to see him again. We wouldn't be allowed to visit. It was really, really, really scary.
Yeah.
Days, 3, 4, 5 days go by, and he's doing better, and they have him in rehab and all of this. It turns out that his skin doctor put him on a couple of different steroids, like I can't remember what it was, but it was a couple of different
How did
things.
they do that?
Screwed him up. So when he was back home, finally, and we were all like, we had really been scared about what was going to happen. And so I called him, and he was home, and I said, "How you doing?" He goes, I'm all right. I said, are you at least comfortable? And he said, I make a living. So to me, something like that, I'd like to leave a nice Jewish joke that seems very anticlimactic, but makes people laugh.
I love that. I love that.
I knew he was back.
What do you wish you could tell your students that you don't think they understand when you're coaching them? The thing you wish you could get across to them?
They don't understand. Yo quiero para usted llamarme la opción no siguiente siento.
What's that?
I'm sorry. That's I think a wake-up call. What could I tell my students that they don't?
Or what message do you wish, or what do you wish you could because I'm assuming as a teacher.
I think it's love the work. Just love the work. Don't, I spent years, people trying to tell me not to look for outside, getting it from the outside. It took me years to realize that the pleasure, the joy, I did a play with Alex Picard, and I felt my heart breaking for the first time in real life. I don't even think my heart ever broke in a relationship, because I was always so we had a lot of fun, and if we broke up, we'd have, I never really had that. But there was a moment on stage with Alex where it was the rise and rise of Daniel Rocket, and they fall in love as kids, and he comes back 30 years later and he can't fly anymore. He can fly. And he says something like, I'm falling, Alice. I'm falling. And I felt a pain in my chest that I'd never felt. And I thought, even in the moment, because you're an actor and you've got two voices, I'm going, is this what heartbreak feels like? And then I let go of that, and I just went right back to it. And I thought, this is why we do this, because we feel things so other people don't have to.
Yeah.
But the gift of that is that we get to become more of who we are every time.
We get to live 100 lives.
And we become a little bit more like that character. So it'd be to not try, because that's Yoda says don't try. It would be to love the work and do it because of what you personally get from the bearer of creativity. And if you love it and you do it and you honor it, it'll pay off in ways that you may not, I don't own my own house. I have no savings. God only knows. I may be coming to live with some of you people at some point. But I'm 60. I just turned 63 last week, and I've been an actor since I was 12. And I just wouldn't give up, even though
next week?
Last week.
Last week. You're a Gemini.
Taurus, May 18th.
Oh, poor
So I
thing.
think that's it. I think it has to be to do it for
love.
Do it for love. What I did for love. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. It was a pure delight chatting with you. Oh, wait.
Thank you.
Oh, people are saying thank you. I thought we had another question. I shall send you the chat afterwards. And what is it? Is it a Jewish term? Mensch.
Mensch. Oh, sure.
And that's a compliment, isn't it?
It's a compliment. A mensch is just
You are a mensch. It's a wise man. Is it a wise man? Is that what a mensch is?
No, a mensch isn't a wise man. A mensch is a good guy. He'll go out of your way. He'll open the door for you. He'll chase you down the street because you dropped your wallet, whatever.
I love the word. I've always loved the word. I've never gotten to call it. You are a mensch.
I'm one.
Yes. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Really Thanks for joining, everyone. Mwah!
Yes.
Bye, everyone. 2 weeks, video will be out. See you then.
Awesome.
Bye. Bye. Yeah.